Welcome back, everybody, to the Little Less Fear podcast. Today, I would like to introduce Jim Huling. He's the author of the #1 worldwide best-selling book, The 4 Disciplines of Execution, now in its second edition and translated into 16 languages. Jim has been the 40X Global Managing Consultant for Franklin Covey for more than 13 years, where he has led the coaching of more than 70,000 leaders around the world. Prior to this time, Jim served for more than a decade as CEO of an organization recognized 4 times as one of the 25 best companies to work for in America. As sought out after keynote speaker, Jim has given more than 500 presentations in 13 countries. Among all his awards and recognition, Jim is particularly proud to have been presented with the Turknet National Leader Character Award, representing CEOs who demonstrate the highest level of ethics and integrity. Jim's greatest calling is now as an executive coach, where he draws from the lessons of his own life and career to provide meaningful strategies and guidance to currently more than 30 senior leaders. Jim is most proud of his wonderful marriage of more than 40 years to his sweetheart, Donna, being dad to 2 phenomenal adults, Scott and Sarah, and papa to his 3 grandkids. Jim holds a 3rd-degree black belt in Taekwondo and is currently in his 9th year of CrossFit. My goodness, what an incredible biography, Jim, and welcome to a Little Less Fear podcast.
Thank you, Lena, so much. And I have to say, the longer that introduction is, the older people probably assume that I am, which is probably right. I mean, you'd have to have some time to have done those things. And I'm really pleased with that. Thank you. You introduced me so beautifully and from the heart. Thank you. That makes a great beginning for a podcast like this.
Well, thank you so much, Jim, and thank you for your time. As our listeners know by now, this is a motivational podcast, and people like to hear people's journeys to see what got them to where they currently are. So that's going to be my first question here, Jim. I'm wondering what brought you to where you currently are with this incredible biography of yours. How did you get to where you are currently?
Oh, gosh, thank you.
I know that's such a loaded question.
No, it's a great one, really. But you know, when you're my age, you've got a lot to unpack there, and I don't.
Yes.
And your listeners probably don't want to hear the whole story, but let me choose a segment that seems most meaningful,
do that.
and then we'll see where we want to go from there.
Okay.
Because when I'm asked that question, I immediately zoom back in my life to a point at which I think everybody who knew me would have said that I was sort of riding a wave. You know, I was CEO of a really fine organization. I'd been there 11 years. We'd had tremendous growth in the organization. As you said so kindly, we've been named one of the 25 best places to work in America 4 years in a row, and we'd won all these awards. Everything just seemed to be going as well as it could be. And of the 11 years I was there, that portrayal was really completely accurate for about 9 of them. Okay. But what very few people knew, but know now, and will know today, is that in the last 2 years of that tenure, I was really unhappy. You know, I really had reached a point where I was, in classic language today, we would say burned out, but I don't know if that language even says it the right way. I was feeling a new calling. I was feeling a pull on my life to do something else. And, you know, the hardest time to leave something, the hardest time to say yes to a calling is when the thing you're currently doing is going really well. It would be so easy if you were failing at something. True, you know, actually. I've often said, why can't the calling come when I'm at my lowest instead of when I'm at my highest, you know?
My goodness.
But yet that's sometimes part of the plan. So here I am, imagine I'm feeling in all outward evidences to be a very successful person. And I certainly have a wonderful life, and, you know, was blessed to meet the love of my life many, many years ago. We've been together now 42 years, and, you know, just all those things were really good. And yet here it comes. And I'm so glad you have video, because the only way I have to really describe this is like you're sitting like we are today, but something takes hold of your shirt and just says, I have something else
pulling you in a different direction.
Something else you're supposed to do. And so I came away from that realizing that the hardest thing in the world is to let go of a thing that seems to be working in order to embrace something that may be better. And so later in this journey, I found this incredible quote by Joseph Campbell, who, I'm sure you know, but perhaps some of your listeners know, is a great mythologist, great professor, philosopher, one of the world's great minds to have ever lived. And he said this powerful thing, and I'm going to try to say it as accurately as I can, but I hope your listeners won't hold me to an incredibly high standard on this. But he said, sometimes we are called to give up the life we've created in order to have the life we were born for. And when I read that quote, I thought, that's exactly where I am. That's exactly what's going on with me now. I've created a life that I'm really happy with and I think is really great. And yet unquestionably, I feel I'm being called to something else. So I sat there in my CEO office, if you can imagine, with the greatest job in the world, sort of, and saying, gosh, what can I do? What should I do? Where am I supposed to go? I know this is not it. And I started with this incredibly simple question. I said, if I'm not happy now, then when have I been happy? Let me become an investigator of my own history in order to design my future.
I
So
love
I
that.
did
So you
this
ask
simple
yourself,
exercise.
if
Yeah,
I'm writing this down because it's an incredible question you ask yourself. If I'm not happy now, when was I happy? Is that what you said?
yeah. When have I been happy?
Okay.
And what were the circumstances? In other words, who was I with? What was I doing? What was the purpose of my effort? How was I doing it? There's an old saying that fits this kind of perfectly, and maybe some of your listeners will be my age and they'll remember it. But in essence, how do I become the right person, doing the right work with the right people in the right way for the right reasons?
Yeah.
So can I get 5 rights? How can I get all 5 of those right? And if I can do that, if I can find that intersection, maybe that will be the clue to whatever I'm supposed to do next. Because even though I don't want what I have anymore, I don't know yet what I want. So I went on this journey of exploring my own history, and I identified. I'm trying to say this really quickly because it's a long story, but I'm making it very short for today.
Sure.
The 10 peak moments of my life so far. Now, keep in mind that at this point, I'm probably 45 years old.
Oh,
So
wow.
I've lived long enough and had enough of a career to really have some moments. I probably had 20 moments, but I narrowed it down to the top 10 moments in terms of happiness and fulfillment. And keep in mind, if anybody's taking notes, that I'm only speaking professionally. I'm not trying to commingle the birth of my children or meeting the love of my life
Oh,
or any
wow.
of those
Right.
moments. I'm just talking about the work I'm called to do. What is that?
Mm-hmm.
So I now think of it this way. I've got this list of these 10 moments, my happiest, most fulfilled moments of what at that point would have been about a 30-year career. And I realized 2 things that were stunning, and to use an overworked expression, literally changed my life. One, I didn't have a single one of those moments in my tenure as a CEO.
Wow.
Now, I've been there 9 years at this point, had a lot of success, and I want to be very careful. I love the company, I love the people, I love the work, I gave my whole heart to it. But yet, over the course of my life, not one of those moments that I called peak moments
Peak
were
moments.
as a CEO. Now that, first of all, that's stunning, isn't it?
It is. It is.
And then second, big revelation was, of the 10 moments, 7 of them were when I was standing in front of a group of people teaching or talking about some principle that I really believed in, something that I felt might help them. 7 of the 10, I was in front of a group, small or large, communicating something that I hoped would be of value to them. And the other 3 were when I was doing the same thing, but in writing. So in other words, all 10 of the best moments of the last 30 years had been speaking or writing. Now, every time I tell this story, I sort of feel like I have stupid written across my forehead, because you don't have to be a genius to say, well, what do you think you should do next? Oh my gosh. Right. So I knew what I should do next, and I don't take any credit for that, guys. I say, because I think it's very obvious. But to finish that story, the one thing I am proud of, and every day I say a prayer of gratitude for, is that I was willing to act on that revelation. So I literally, within a course of a short period of time, exited the CEO role and went in search of this next chapter. I am not a risk-taking person, but in this moment, I was given some kind of divine courage. I don't know. I just went out into the world and said, I'm so sure this is what I'm supposed to do, that if I take a step forward, I think the universe will respond to what I'm doing, So I took this step forward. I opened up a little business. I wrote a small book about how to merge a great career and a great life, long before that was a fashionable topic to be writing about. And I sort of hung out my shingle as a person who would coach and help others. And I was in that business for 7 days before I got one of the most important phone calls of my life. My friends at Franklin Covey called and said, hey, we hear that you've decided to embark on a new chapter. and that you're going to be speaking and writing. And they said, that's kind of what we do over here. How
Wow.
would you like to come and teach leaders all over the world?
That's incredible, Jim.
I'm telling you, I still, the hair on my arms are going up right now. And this is a story that's almost 20 years old now, but it was
Wow.
an amazing moment. It's amazing the moment because it illustrates to me something I remember my dad saying to me. And maybe lots of dads have said this to lots of kids, over the years. I don't know. And moms too, by the way. But my dad said, life is a lot like chess. You have to move, and then God moves. And I remember I
I love
lost my
that.
parents when I was very, very young. I was 20 years old when my parents died. But I remember this saying of my dad. He's saying, it never works the other way.
Wow.
You have to move, and then God moves. You have to start. And to this day, I remember. So here I was all these years later, making a move. And then sure enough, here came the greatest company in the world, in my opinion, who teaches the greatest life-changing content in the world. Again, in my opinion, with total bias acknowledged, saying to me, how'd you like to come work for us?
My
It's
goodness.
an unbelievable story, isn't it?
That is an unbelievable
And that
story. It's
started a
beautiful.
14-year chapter of my life in which I got to be
Wow.
part of the greatest company on earth, Franklin Covey. And I had the privilege of writing 2 wonderful books that both became worldwide #1 bestsellers on Amazon. In fact, they held the #1 position for a number of years on Amazon globally. And because of that, I got to travel all over the world and share my thoughts and with them. So I hope I'm sure that's too long of a story,
Not at all.
but I hope it gives you something to us to start with, as friends. That's the miraculous journey of my life. And maybe if time permits, I'll tell you a little more about what I'm doing actually today. But that's really the pivotal story from which I drew a lot of things that I now get a chance to help other people with.
So basically, Jim, when you left the job where you were actually doing really, really well at, you followed your heart, you followed your inner desire, you trusted and you had faith and you believed that God was going to open the door for you, and you went in blindfolded, but geez, within 7 days, which is a lucky number, incredible holy number as
It
well.
is.
You got the call. And so you
Mhm.
took the leap of faith.
Mhm.
What do you tell people when they are in that situation?
Yeah, I love that. What a great question. And I want to say real fast, the very first thing I would say, even responding to what you just said,
Sure.
is it sounds like a story where I never had a hesitation, I never had a fear, I never had a doubt. I just went for it.
Uh-huh.
And if I was an internet motivational influencer, I'd probably tell
Yeah.
the story maybe like that.
Yeah.
But since it's you and me who are friends, I want to say
Sure.
it didn't feel like that at all. I was scared to death. I
Mhm.
was praying every day, and I was afraid I wasn't going to find what I wanted to do. And I had walked
Mhm.
away from what a lot of people in the world would think of as great security. There's 2 sides of CEO security. You either think you have a lot or you have none. The CEO
Mhm.
life is sort of like that. But it was a lot. And in all
Yeah.
of that, I wouldn't want anyone to say, well, I don't have that kind of courage, or
Mhm.
I'm afraid, or I'm nervous to make that kind of a move, so I'm not going to do it. I wouldn't want them to hear my story and think I'm not ready, because
Mhm.
I didn't feel ready either. I just felt incredibly unhappy. And I was tired of being unhappy enough that I said, I'm going to search. And then, of course, I had that benevolent thing happen.
Right.
But the most amazing thing about all of that, I think, and I believe this with all my heart, but I'm not a prophet, and I'm not a philosopher, and I'm not a spiritual leader. I don't, I'm just a person sharing with you my experience. But I believe it with all my heart that callings are not random, that every person on earth was born for some purpose. There's a reason we're here. And if you zoom all the way out and think about the planet, each of
Yes.
us, in my belief system, was born to play a certain part, to do
Mhm.
a certain thing. And without our puzzle piece, whether our piece is big or small, the picture will never be complete without the unique thing we were brought here to do. And even in your story and in mine, I think the circumstances of our life are there to help us be ready to play our part. When the light
Yes.
comes on and the curtain parts, and we say, it's time,
Yeah.
go. You don't want to say, wait, I'm not ready. I need to
Right,
prepare.
right.
You want to be ready for that moment, and you want to be living in expectation of that moment, so that when it comes, it's the most natural thing in the world. So that was really my story. As long as people remember it wasn't this fearless Superman flying through the sky
Yeah.
kind of story. I was scared to death, but I was also certain that I was not alone in this journey and that I was being called to something. I wasn't trying to run away from being a CEO. I was trying to run toward feeling that I was on purpose with my life, that I was doing what I was born to do, and that I was going to somehow be able to use that to make a difference.
I love it. I love what you just said right now. The feeling of being on purpose with your life.
Mm. Yeah,
And
I've said it this way to other people, and see if it resonates with you. I don't know, but it's my way of expressing it. That the way I think about it is, everybody is born with an inner blueprint. You can't
yeah,
see it. It's not a tattoo, but it's inside you. It's like it's in these days we would say it's like an inner GPS.
yes, it is.
And every day that I live on purpose, every day that I align my actions and my work toward the thing I believe I was brought here to do, then I have this kind of incredible peace. Whether I'm successful or not is not the issue. The
Hmm.
issue is, am I on track? Am I faithfully moving toward what I feel called to do? And when I have that, then I have peace. And let me quickly say, it's not a perfect journey. It has zigzags all over it. So
Absolutely.
any day when I'm not on purpose, when I have a chance to do something that's not part of my purpose, but it appeals to my ego, or it pays more money, or it's more
Hmm.
glamorous, or whatever. And I don't have a lot of those, but I have occasionally some of those opportunities. I get tempted to go say yes to that. And the moment I turn my attention away from my purpose and towards some other satisfier, I lose
Hmm.
that feeling of peace. So if anybody who knew me was going to only remember one thing from this whole podcast, it would be this idea that peace and joy
Hmm.
are my compass. And I program my GPS, just like this morning. I programmed my GPS to take me to a restaurant where I was going to have breakfast with a friend. I program my inner GPS to take me toward joy and fulfillment. And I believe this with all my heart. Joy is a valid compass.
Yes, it is.
Every day I
Absolutely.
work with executives who we intellectually make a plan for them. We think about the pros and the cons and what their skill set is and what they're excited about. And we put all that together, which is not a bad process at all. It's a good way to start.
Hmm.
But I never finish that with anybody without saying, now, does this bring you joy? Because I think joy is the ultimate compass for guiding a life. And you can trust your intellect to help you do the right thing in the right way with the right people, but it's your heart that navigates toward joy. So the heart has to lead and the mind has to follow. We can't have the mind leading because the mind gets distracted by all kinds of things. But if we let the heart lead, if we program our GPS for joy, then our mind will still say, hey, turn left here, turn right there. What about
Yeah.
this? What about that? Our mind will
Right.
still help us, but the mind has to work in service of the heart if you want your GPS system to run the way it was designed to run.
I love that. Your mind has to follow your heart. I mean, your heart has to be the first voice in your
That's right.
head.
That's right. And can we just say for everybody listening, a lot of people are listening to us and they're driving down the road or they're eating a sandwich or something, it does not work the other way. If you use your mind to intellectually say, well, based on these 7 factors, this is what I should do with my life,
Hmm.
you might be successful, but you will never be fulfilled. You
Or
have to let
completely
the
joyful.
heart lead. Let the mind serve the heart. The heart does the strategy, the mind does execution. The heart does the direction, the mind does the terrain and the turn-by-turn directions for how to get there. That's the way to navigate yourself to a really great life.
Joy comes from the heart. Joy does not come from the mind.
That's right. That's what I believe. And so put joy first.
I love
What a
this.
radical idea in a world where we all overthink everything. Can you
Right.
imagine?
It's
Imagine
incredible.
me saying to a senior executive, okay, well, let's design the next chapter of your career. And before we go deep in all kinds of pros and cons and analytical factors, let's just pause a minute. What makes you happy? What are you doing when you're happy? Because remember now, in Jim's story, that's what I did. I started as a burned out CEO saying, well, okay, when have I been happy? And is my past somehow a useful indicator of what I might want to be doing in the future? And in my case, it turned out to be, as it does for most people.
Jim, that's incredible. I love that you're saying all this because I mean, I'm working on this workshop and with this brainstorming process, working with the mind, I have to bring it into my heart and I constantly ask myself, is this going to bring me joy? Is this bring me happiness? Because when I'm feeling passionate about something, that's usually where joy and passion, all of that comes together. Because I don't normally have passion with my mind. It's passion with my heart.
That's right. I don't even know if the mind is capable, you know, of passion,
Right.
but look at you. You're an incredibly successful person in your field. You have one of the top 100 podcasts
Thank
in
you. I
the
appreciate
world,
that.
and there's millions of podcasts in the world, right? But
I appreciate it.
you're in an incredibly elite group of podcasters. Well, you could get caught up in followers, in monetization of your content, in your outreach, and you know, how many episodes do I have? How many likes, comments? And so you could get all caught up in that.
Sure.
But that's not what you're doing. What you're doing is you're trying to help a lot of people through a very powerful medium.
Yes.
And I would only say this to you, although you don't need this advice, you're already doing it, is if you stay true to that, the likes and the follows and the monetization and the success will all come. But if you put the monetization and the likes and the success and the celebrity in front, you try to let that lead, you might actually get somewhere, but you'll find that you're saying, there's nothing in this for me. There's no joy in this. There's no fulfillment in this. I'm just putting on a great podcast. So keeping that first, that's the key.
It's so true, Jim, because many times where I do get caught up, because I'm part of this company, Buzzsprout and Podmatch, and they will tell you there's a dashboard and it tells you where you're at globally. And sometimes there was a time where I was like every other day looking at the numbers, and that started to stress me out. And when I was like, what? I'm not doing this for the numbers. I never started doing this for the numbers. So how did I even get caught up with that? And the minute I let it go, a week or two, that's when I start feeling fulfilled again, feeling happy and feeling purposeful. So yeah, definitely letting go of all those other things that really don't matter, because the mission here is to have an outreach to reach people's hearts and to bring joy into their life. Yeah.
I think that's exactly right. Now I would tag a little thought on the end, a very tiny thought. Those companies and products you mentioned are really fine places. They are wonderful tools. Podmatch is a great tool, right?
Yes.
So neither you nor I mean any disparagement towards them. They're great.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely. I'm so happy that
they're
they
in
give me
the
this
front,
platform.
if you put that kind of stuff in the front and hope that the fulfillment and the joy will follow, you've got a flawed equation.
Yeah.
But if you put the joy and being of service to a large number of people in the front, you'll find you have all of those things come as a byproduct of doing the right thing in the right place in the right way with the right people for the right reason. If you can do that, you'll have all the followers you want, you'll monetize in a powerful way, and you'll reach a lot of people.
I love that, Jim. Jim, tell us about your book, The 4 Disciples of Execution.
Yes, I wish it was The 4 Disciples. That'd be a great book. 4 Disciplines of Execution.
Oh, did I say disciples?
No, yeah, it's very close.
I did.
Oh, no. And you should see the word discipline in other languages looks really weird.
It looks like disciple. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks just like disciple. Come on, no problem. But I'll tell you a very interesting thing. So first of all, I wrote this book with my dear friend, Chris McChesney, and we formed a kind of partnership that we both agree was a divine intersection. Two life paths came together at the right moment for a purpose. We were both supposed to write this book. And we both agree that neither of us could have written it without the other. So it is truly, you know, Dr. Covey used to talk about 1 + 1 = 3 as a representation of synergy, what synergy really means. Well, that's what Chris and I have. 1 + 1 = 3. And this book became a product of that. But we wrote it because we both had a heart for leaders in a particular situation, a leader or a person who has a goal they want to achieve. And if you're a leader, maybe you're saying, you know, I want to take my team to a new level. I want to take my company to a higher valuation so we can go public, or I want to expand my customer base. Or if you're an individual, maybe you're saying, I want to run a marathon this year, or I want to achieve, you know, some goal in my community. I want to help a lot of people. So no matter whether you're a leader in an organization or you're an individual on a personal goal, you have the same dilemma. Making a plan is so easy compared to executing the plan.
That's for
And I
sure.
mean, here we're recording this in mid-February, you know, where all New Year's resolutions go to die. It's mid-February.
Oh my
There's a big
goodness.
graveyard somewhere, right? So everything you said on New Year's Eve, everything you said, this is the marathon year, I'm
Yeah.
doing, you know, or I'm hitting this goal this year with my team. Right about now is when 2/3 of the world has lost heart on those goals.
Yeah.
And I only say that as a way of illustrating that strategy is important, but relatively easy compared to execution. And
Mhm.
execution is not complicated, but it's difficult. It takes discipline. So we came up with this idea of 4 disciplines of execution, 4 simple ideas.
Uh-huh.
And may I be very fast to say, we did not originate these 4 ideas. Come on, they've been around as long as there have been
Okay.
human beings on Earth. But we did package them in a way that they were easily understood and implemented. That's the gift we think we brought. So I tell them to you really fast. The first discipline is
Sure.
focus.
Okay.
So in other words, it's the ability to say, this is going to sound unbelievably simple, but it's powerful. This one thing is the single most important thing I am doing at this time.
Mhm.
And I have many other things I'm doing, but they are all less important than this one thing.
Mhm.
Now, there's not a single person listening to us today who didn't say, really, is that it? I mean, really, that's your first discipline, you know? And anybody who says that, all I can say back is, you've clearly never tried this,
Right.
because that is unbelievably hard to do. So the first idea is, let me separate the thing that matters most from everything else that matters.
Mhm.
And we like to call that a wildly important goal, or a WIG for shorthand.
And Jim, do you usually have people write it down in the order of
Mhm.
importance? Like they've got 10, 15, 20 things, and then you kind of just have them go in order of what
It's the
basically is the most
easiest
important thing.
way of getting the mind engaged, is if you
Okay.
make a list of 10 things and narrow it down,
Mhm.
as opposed to saying, well, I'm just going to sit here in my chair until the one thing becomes clear. It usually doesn't work that way.
Right.
But to write out 10 things and then narrow it to 5, and then go
Mhm.
from 5 to 3, and then go from 3 to 1. And I want to promise everybody who's listening, the journey from 3 to 1 is the
It's
hard part of the
challenging.
journey, right?
It's
It's not
so
very hard to go
challenging.
from 10 to 5, honestly.
Right.
But 3 down to 1, oh my gosh, you know?
Mhm. Yeah.
So, but the idea is simple, that it takes about 80% of our capacity just to sustain the life we've already created. We've got work and kids and family and meals to prepare and, you know,
Right.
exercise. We got everything in the world we
Yeah.
got to do. It takes about 80% of what we've got. So we start with just a little bit of capacity to do something new. We only have a little bit, because the rest of it's already accounted for, right?
Mhm.
In the sustaining of our lives. So if you think of it that way, if you only had this little slice of untapped capacity left, then how many ways are you going to try to divide that? Like, it's only this big, say it's
Mhm.
20%. Well,
Mhm.
if I try to have 3 goals, then I can only give each one about 30% of my capacity. So I'm already spreading. If I try to have 10 goals, I can only give each one about 2% of my, it's meaningless. So in
Sure.
other words, the key to focus is realizing that you have a limited capacity to begin, and you will get the greatest results if you apply all of that capacity to the thing that matters most. So just separate it out, you know, draw a line down the middle of the page. Most important goal here, all the other goals over
Yeah,
here.
you're not saying it's not important. You're just saying this is most important at the moment.
Exactly. And we're not saying only have one goal, but we are saying only have one most important goal at a time. That's number 1.
Yes.
No,
I
number
love
2
that.
is really simple.
Okay.
Number 2 is based on the idea, there's a Buddhist idea of right action, which means I do the
Yeah.
right thing in the right place for the right reasons. You're familiar with this, I know.
Yeah.
We have a very similar idea, which we refer to as the principle of leverage.
Okay.
And it's as simple as this. If you're trying to achieve a goal,
Mhm.
don't do everything you can think of.
Okay.
Don't do it. Because if you spread yourself across 15, 20, 30 actions to try to
Mhm.
achieve the goal, excuse me, each action will only get a little tiny portion of your energy.
Okay.
So instead, find the 1 or 2 things that are the true drivers of your goal. and put all of your energy on those, double down on those. So, excuse me, if you're a salesperson, you might say, well, okay, my most important goal is to hit my new record in sales. Well, what are the actions that are the biggest drivers of that goal? Well, maybe that's face-to-face meetings with customers, or maybe that's powerful presentations of our offerings, our product offerings, capabilities, and benefits. I don't know what it is, but the way of thinking is to say, what are the two things possibly that are the true drivers? Now, I'll give you a very fast example. We have a lot of hotels around the world that have used the 4 disciplines, and many of them are using it to achieve a goal of guest satisfaction. Well, one of the biggest drivers of guest satisfaction is cleanliness. Nobody gets a great rating if the hotel's not clean, right? Yeah. I mean, even if the food's great and the bathroom's dirty, you're not giving it a high score. So cleanliness becomes powerful. Well, one of our biggest clients found that the action that drove cleanliness was double cleaning the bathroom mirrors every day. In other words, getting world class about the cleanliness of the bathroom created an impression that the whole hotel is amazingly clean. And so that became an action that had a big return. Whereas the same kind of action on something else might not have brought the same return. So that's the idea of the second discipline. Find the 1 or 2 things that drive your goal and put all your energy into them instead of spreading yourself across 10 or 20 or 30 actions. Third discipline, I'll speed up a little bit. I think I may be taking too much time.
Not at all.
Third discipline is the discipline of engagement. So now remember, we've only talked about 3 simple things so far. Focus, that's number 1. Leverage, that's number 2. Finding actions that yield big results, leverage. And then now discipline 3 is about engagement. And here's an easy way to remember those. Discipline 1 is about what you're trying to do. Discipline 2 is about how you're trying to do it. And discipline 3 is about why you want to do it. So discipline 3 is in the mind-heart connection. Discipline 3 is the heart. Discipline 3 is, why does this matter? Why do I want to do this? What good will this do in the world? And I like to always say a lot. I probably say it too much. I'm a huge fan of money. I think money is awesome. And I frankly like to have all the money I can get, and I bet you would too.
Yeah.
But I would also say that money is not a sustainable source of fulfillment. I mean, how many stories do you know of unhappy rich people? Right? You know, hundreds of them. You see them on the news every night, So this is the discipline that asks you to engage with this goal at the level of why it truly matters. Why is this something you care about? You will always work harder for the things that you believe in than you will for the things you simply get paid for. You always will. You'll always find a deeper source of energy and passion for the things you believe in than you will for the things you simply get paid for. Getting paid for something is sort of the lowest bar. It's honorable. There's nothing wrong with it. It's honorable. It's good, And let's all get a raise this year. I hope I do. It's all good. But let's also call it what it is. It's the lowest level of working. And the higher level, the more sustainable level of working comes when we believe in what we're doing, when we believe that it matters. So that's the third discipline. And then the last one of all is the discipline of accountability. So for anybody keeping notes, focus, leverage, engagement, and we finish with accountability. Now, you have to say this real fast or people turn off the podcast, Leah, is accountability, is often gets a bad rap, I think. If your boss calls you on the phone and says, hey, can you be in my office at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning? We need to have an accountability meeting. There's no way that you're going to go, yes, I can't wait.
Yeah, right.
No, you know what you're going to do. You're going to think, oh no, I'm in trouble or I've done something, whatever, right? But that's really how accountability gets a bad rap. Because accountability is also that characteristic where we inspire each other to be and do the very best we're capable of doing. You think of it like a coach and an athlete. When we're just finished football season, so let's use football as a metaphor. When the athlete fails to catch a pass and runs over to the sideline and the coach is all over him and saying you ran the wrong route and you didn't turn head and your eyes were in the wrong place. You didn't have your
Yeah.
hands up. The things I've taught you, you didn't do any of the things I've taught you.
Oh
You
my
know, and the
goodness.
coach is animated and says, I don't ever want to see you do that again. When you go back
Yeah.
out on the field, I want everything to be the way we taught you to do it. You know, is that coach being cruel to that athlete? I'd say no. I'd say that coach, that's love in action. That is that coach stepping out passionately to make an impression on the mind of this athlete so that the athlete can get better. And if the very next play, the athlete catches the ball and makes a touchdown and wins the Super Bowl, you think anybody's going back to that coach and saying, hey, thanks for coaching him so much? No. So that's why I know it's from love, because there's no award given for the best advice ever given by a coach, you know, but there's an award given to every athlete who wins a championship.
That's so true. That's
Right.
so
So
true.
this coach is actually demonstrating love and care in that moment, even though they're animated or they're angry or they're, you know, they're doing everything they can to get through to this athlete so that the athlete can get better. Well, that's what true accountability is. And,
So
and
true
if we came
accountability is
together
inspiring each other to do your best.
to do your best and to become your best. Yeah. So accountability is also, you know, you saying to me, hey, Jim, you know, I see that if you're my coach, you say, I see you're off your nutrition plan. For the last 4 days, you've been off your nutrition plan. I thought we agreed you were really going to stick to this time. And I'm like, oh God, no, I'm so sorry. You know, and I wish well, okay. Are you trying to be mean to me in that moment? Are you
No,
trying
not
to
at
make me
all.
feel worse? Of course not. You're trying to help me get where I told you I wanted to get. Well,
Right.
what greater demonstration of love is there than that, you know? But
That's
we
so
give
true.
accountability this bad rap because it's uncomfortable, because it
Mhm.
calls out our ability to be comfortable with
Right.
mediocrity or with where we are. And I'm not saying everybody has to be a CEO or a high achiever. The world doesn't need everybody to be a high achiever. But what the world needs is for every single person to become who they were born to be and do what they were born to do. That's what we need. So accountability becomes this powerful force that enables us or inspires us to become all that we were really born to be, I think. So that's focus, leverage, engagement, accountability. That's the 4 disciplines of execution. Now in use with over 300,000 organizations around the world, and this particular book in 16 languages, and it's in its 2nd edition. So thanks for giving me a minute to explain that.
Oh, that was beautiful, Jim. Jim, what's the difference between the first and the second edition?
Well, now, boy, what an astute question. The 1st edition was primarily directed toward leaders of teams with a
Okay.
sideline application to your personal life. The
Nice.
2nd book was written with a new 30% new material written for leaders of leaders with
Wow.
still the same ability to do it. So I'll tell you, when we finished the 1st book, one of the things we realized somehow in the 300 pages of a best-selling book we had missed is that there is a real difference in the skills and the techniques and the motivation used to lead a team versus leading leaders. Leading leaders is a unique science. And Leon, I got to just think that somewhere there's all these people driving their car going, oh my God, I'm so glad somebody finally said that. You
Yeah.
know, because leading a team was so simple, and now I'm leading a bunch of leaders, and this is really complicated. So the 2nd edition, its most unique aspect is it has a whole section dedicated to the art and the science
hmm
of leading leaders, not just leading teams.
What's the greatest challenge of leading leaders versus leading teams?
Yeah. Well, I love that question. And now we have about 3 hours for me to answer that.
Okay,
No,
how
I'll
about
give it to
two,
you.
1 or 2
Yeah,
great
yeah.
challenges?
Oh, you're so kind. No, I might take you up on that. No, it's really easy to say in a simple way.
Okay.
The single greatest challenge is that when you lead leaders, the leaders you are leading have a higher expectation of autonomy, of involvement, of ownership. In other words, people on a team are sometimes quite content for the leader to give clear direction and everybody on the team go and do what the leader has suggested. And that's not to say the team doesn't have ideas and they don't participate. I'm not speaking of it autocratically,
hmm
but I am saying that's kind of the basics of how most frontline teams work. Well, leaders of leaders have a whole different idea. You know, leaders of leaders appreciate being given a clear direction or a clear goal to achieve, but they want a high degree of ownership in how that goal is approached and how it's measured and what the tactics and techniques are going to be. And they also have this secondary challenge that once they get themselves fully engaged, they have to go engage all the people who follow them, So if it's a peanut butter sandwich, they're the peanut butter. They're right in the middle where they have to both work well upwardly, but they have to work well to the front line as well. And I tell you, I think that's the most complicated. People say being a CEO is the most complicated job in the world. And I just tell you, it wasn't my experience. Now maybe they would say, well, maybe you weren't a great CEO. I don't know. You could debate this point. But I think leading leaders is the hardest job. I think leading a team or leading from the top are relatively easier than being right there in the middle where you have both audiences you have to find a way to engage.
Do you consider yourself a leader, Jim?
I want to say yes, but I would tell you this. The definition that says if you want to know if you're a leader, there's 3 ways to know if you're a leader. One, when you look behind you, is there anybody there? So number 1, does anybody follow you? Forget about titles. Forget about all that.
Yeah.
Let's don't even talk about that. It's so confusing. Look behind you. Is there anybody there, figuratively speaking? Say you want to do something or say, why don't we do this? Does anybody say, yeah, let's do that?
Yeah.
So is anybody behind you when you're following them? And then second is the difference about being a leader. Do you have a sense of direction? In other words, so many people are, and I'm not being critical when I say this, I'm just categorizing to say, really happy to come to work and say, this is what the company wants us to do. Let's go get busy.
Right.
But leaders say, well, why aren't we going that way? Or why are we doing that? Or what about this? Well, I have a different idea. What about that? And if you've got all that going on, you're probably a leader, because you've got that unique voice in your head. And then last of all, and I have to say, the final chapter of the 2nd edition and a lot of my heart is written toward, do you genuinely care about the people that you're leading? Because if all you care about is producing a result, then people are expendable to you. They're just resources. Right. But if you care about the people, they will produce extraordinary results. In other words, if you put the people first, they'll do extraordinary things. If you put the money first, people will comply. They'll do their jobs. Everybody wants to keep their job. Everybody wants to be successful, get a promotion, whatever. So in other words, you can lead by compliance. People do what they're supposed to do, or you can lead by engagement. And when you lead by engagement, then you get this extra that we all have inside us, but we don't give it out freely. We only give it out when something calls to it, Haven't you had a job where you did just what was required and you were excellent at just what was required? Yeah. And then you've had other jobs, or maybe now in your podcast, you find yourself giving more and more and more because you want to, because you're part of it. It means something to you. Right. Well, that's a good way to think. If you're a leader, you're listening to this, or if you work for a leader, are you in the compliance? You're world class at doing exactly what you're supposed to do. Nothing wrong with that. Or are you in the side of commitment? You're all in. You're going all the way. This matters. You're going to make sure this happens. Well, that one little test right there will tell you a lot about whether you're where you should be, or whether there's somewhere else you should be thinking about.
Jim, what if, I consider myself leader, and based on the questions that the questions I just asked myself, but sometimes I fall into my own trap where I give too much. So at what point does a leader have to, or should a leader back down a little bit and let things come to the leader rather than constantly leading and giving?
Yeah. I think this is a deep question now you've asked. And
it is.
I want to give it its due, but I also recognize, boy, we could have a whole podcast on just this one question.
Probably.
See, no wonder you're in the top 100 because you've done your homework and you ask questions like. So I say this I'm going to say this really sensitively. I am a huge believer in passionate, high velocity living inside of solid steel guardrails. And I'll tell you what I mean by that, but the metaphor means something to me. I'll see if I can make it mean something to anybody else. A lot of people say, you hear guardrails and they think they're being constricted. They see them as a limitation. So you say, hey, there's, I want you to achieve this objective, but here's the guardrails. You need to
Mhm.
not do this. You need to always do that. So the guardrails are on the thing. And a lot of people resent that because they say, no,
Right.
I want a wide open playing field. Don't restrict me. Let me go where I want to go and do what I want to do.
Mhm.
Well, and I'm unapologetically stretching this metaphor a little bit. I realize that. But I think the presence of guardrails enables you to go faster because you can't go off the road. You can't
Mhm.
get lost. You can't. In other words, if I'm free, as long as I'm inside the guardrails, I'm on track. Great. Let me go as fast as I can. I don't have to be checking all the time, with it. So I love this idea of high velocity living enabled by clear guardrails that keep me on track with my life. I think that's a powerful way to think about the question you've asked. Now, we could go really deep, but I don't want to miss the fact, we know more today about mental health than we've ever known. I know more about
Yeah,
mental health as a human being,
for sure.
and I've been leading people over 40 years, and I feel I always was. I hope I was always a compassionate, empathetic leader, but I know way more now than I did back then. So
Mhm.
that's a good thing that's happened. We've learned about how we have to protect our capacity in order to have any capability.
Oh
And if
my
we don't
goodness. Yes.
protect our
Protect your
capacity
capacity.
in
Wow.
order to have capability, right? So in other words, a person who gets clear about how much they want to work or what way they want to work or in what environment they need to work or gets clear about how to take care of themselves, whether it's as simple as nutrition and hydration or whether it's something more complex, are often accused of being selfish. And people will say, well, gosh, you're so picky about what you eat and you
Mhm.
exercise every day, you do all these things, you're just so self-centered, your whole life's about you. And I would say that's not true.
Right.
Because I do these things, I do all those things I just mentioned in order to have the capacity to be of service. And to
Exactly.
me, my greatest nightmare is I come to a moment of service where I realize I could really make a difference and I don't have any capacity left. I'm
Right.
exhausted. I'm tired, or even worse, I'm hopeless. I'm cynical. I got nothing left. So I'm sorry. I know we're at a pivotal moment, but I can't help you. Now that's
Oh,
my nightmare right
oh
there.
yeah.
So I do all those things. I drink a gallon of water every day. I get 8 hours of sleep. I take my supplements. I do
Wow.
CrossFit, as you said,
Yeah.
3 days a week. And I do those things not out of selfishness. I do them because I'm on a mission with my life. And I'm not trying to be dramatic. There are more important people in the world than me. I'm not saying that. But I am
Right.
saying I got a sense of my purpose. I know what I'm supposed to be doing. And imagine here I am today. I'm being interviewed by one of the top 100 podcasts in the world. What if I was tired? What if I was
Mhm.
just like, oh man, I didn't eat any lunch today and I just slept late last night. I'm not really feeling my best. So here's an answer. I hope it's good enough. I would miss this whole opportunity that was given to me today to
That's
reach
so true.
millions of people because of you. So
That's
I
very true.
protect my capacity and I reject anybody's judgment that I'm being selfish because I take good care of myself. I reject that because I know what I'm doing. I'm preserving my capacity so that I can have capability to fulfill my purpose on the earth. I think that's how that works. And I hope everybody that hears me sort of stood up straighter just now and said, hey, wait a minute, that's right.
That
That's what
is
I'm
right. I love
you
that.
know, I protect
Conditioning
it.
yourself. I always say that because I meditate every day and I do like a chakra meditation and
Yeah, yeah,
I walk as much as I can. And when I'm doing that, I often tell people, well, I'm conditioning. I'm conditioning for
yeah.
the life
That's right.
that I'm
That's right.
prepared for, preparing for.
Yeah. I mean, think of athletics. It's a beautiful microcosm. I know you can talk about things that are good and bad about athletics, but at its heart, athletics is a noble thing. It
It
is the
is.
striving to use the gifts you were given at the highest possible level.
Right.
So sure, if I'm out walking, I'm not just walking. I'm not just walking to have a pleasant life, and there's nothing wrong with having a pleasant life.
Right.
But I'm walking to build my capacity so that I have capability. I want to be able to serve when the moment arises. I don't want to fall short and have a moment when I could have done something I'd be proud of the rest of my life. And by the way, I keep talking about work, but what about with my kids? I want to be a world-class dad. I want to be a world-class husband. I want to be a world-class friend. So what if I have a moment and there we are? The moment is here and I don't have anything left. I'm empty.
Oh
Yeah,
no.
that's my nightmare. So I'm fierce about protecting my capacity to be able to be of service.
Jim, you are fierce about it, and you've motivated me so much. I feel like doing 50 push-ups right now.
Let's do it right now, right now.
Jim, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for being on A Little Less Fear podcast. How can our viewers, our watchers, and our listeners find you and your book?
Oh, that's great. Thank you for asking. The book is everywhere. So any place you buy books, just look for the 4 disciplines of execution. And of course, I would encourage everybody to look hard enough to get the new edition, the 2nd edition, which came out this spring, as opposed to the older one, although they're both fine books. And, I think you get some value from either ones. And then finding me is like the easiest thing on earth. So everywhere, I'm everywhere. And everywhere I am, my name is just my handle. So JIMHULING, Jim Huling, will get you to me on LinkedIn, on Instagram, or on Facebook. That's where I spend my time. And just about every day of my life, not perfect, but just about every day, I post a message that I hope is inspirational or motivational or educational. I try to tick one of those 3 boxes every day with something that I've learned from my life. For all the people who will never engage me as a coach, I still have a way of serving them. Think through the miracle of social media. I can reach 1 million people if I write a great post. So I spend some time every day in the early morning hours thinking of what could I say today that might help someone. And it always falls into one of those 3 categories. But, most days it comes out pretty well. And I just invite anybody that wants to follow me and look those up. And hey, send me a note. Say, I was listening to you on the podcast, or something. We'll have a chance to celebrate this great podcast. But I'm all those places, JIMHULING. And I think you have that in the notes too.
I do have it. Jim, thank you so much for sharing your incredible wisdom, light, energy here on A Little Less Fear podcast, and with all the wonderful listeners that are able to withdraw and feel the light that you give. It's really amazing. Just in my notebook, I'm looking at all my notes. It's like the heart has to lead and the mind has to follow, and that feeling of being on purpose with your life, that's definitely what my top, actually, it's all circled with stars. So thank you so much
You
for
are
being
that.
an
You are that.
incredible star.
And I know it's time to go, but can I just say thank you back to you?
Of course.
If it weren't for you, I'd be having dinner right now and not reaching all the people that will be reached by this podcast. So thank you for doing something brave and bold and courageous with your life. And you don't have to say a word. I just know it can't have been easy. And
Right.
podcasting is not a simple profession. It's complicated, highly competitive. There's a lot of people in it. And to get your message out there and have it stand out and reach the people you wanted to reach is a real thing to be proud of. And you've done it, man. You're in the top 100 podcast. You've done it, So thanks to you, people like me have a platform. And without the platform, I could go out in the neighborhood and shout some words of wisdom, but nobody's you make it possible for some.
I'm glad I could make this possible for you. Thank you so much, Jim. I mean, that really means a lot. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, you have a
I hope you have me
wonderful,
back
blessed
again.
day. I'd love to have you back.
I'll unapologetically, shamelessly put in a plug to say I would love to come back. And sometime in the future, when people have had a chance to get past this one, haven't had enough of me, I'd love to come back.
I'd be honored to have you back, Jim. Definitely.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
It was
thank you.
Nice meeting you and nice
What an
connecting with you. Absolutely.
Yes,
you have a blessed rest of your day now.
thank you.